Uh, First, as always, my name is Joseph Cadott. I'm a writer, editor, and former educator. Um, and I have some books which you can buy if you want. You don't have to. Um, However, I do encourage you to ask questions, comment, and give me requests for what you would like me to talk about. Feel free to do so in line while this is going on. If anybody ever actually watches, it looks like we have one viewer. So, and if you don't have a chance to ask questions while this is going on, feel free to comment on the videos both here on Twitch and on YouTube, which is where this will be uploaded shortly. As you can see, I'm still in my office because this is the only way I can reliably get this to work. So there's that. Now, let's go on to the corollary of Ancient Aliens, which is future aliens. So I think we've discussed extensively why Ancient Aliens aren't a thing and won't be a thing, no matter how much we look. There is a chance that aliens have visited us in the past. However, they have left no record. So from our perspective as humans, it's not really relevant. Bear in mind, though, that recorded history only goes back about 10,000, 12,000 years. Civilization goes back just a little bit further than that. And almost all the hundred thousands of years of hominid history is completely anonymous, relatively small populations. And, you know, the history of humanity goes back roughly 5 million years as this, you know, as all our precursors to what we are today. So, you know, there may simply have, they could have, like, taken a tribe of Neanderthals and studied them, and no one would be the wiser, which is in fact part of the plot of the Heechee Saga by Frederik Pohl, which is a good series if you like science fiction. Anyways, it's a classic series. It starts with Gateway, I think. Anyways, let's move away from that because there's nothing realistically we can look at from that about that issue. Again, we don't have any evidence, so there's no objective way to study this. And there's no need for alien intervention, as I discussed in the last sequence. So, question is, future aliens. Well, that actually becomes more likely. I know I've said before that it's unlikely that we would encounter aliens for hundreds of years, but that's not quite right. There's a reason why I said what I did, and there's a reason why it's wrong, and a reason why it's right. The reason why it's wrong is probably most important, which is that when the British invented radar, they created a giant radio signal, which has only gotten stronger in making the Earth one of the brightest things in this part of space. I mean, not initially, but eventually, we are now one of the brightest things in this part of space, in the radio spectrum. So, just from sheer curiosity standpoint, you have all of a sudden this thing which was mute, completely insignificant in the electromagnetic spectrum, become a huge broadcaster, and then that broadcaster grows stronger, and on top of that, it's regularized in such a way that it clearly is artificial. I mean, these are obviously artificial signals, not something that can be confused for a pulsar, for example, or any other natural phenomena which looks artificial from a distance, but if you study it, you realize it's not. So this becomes something that we're doing, whether we know it or not, but now you know, where we're basically telling everybody within, what, 80 years of us, that hey, we're here. Come at least look at us. So we become a really interesting spot, because if all of a sudden something drastically changes in part of your sky, astronomers are just going to look at it no matter what. Okay, this has been what we've done, and anybody who's studying any phenomenon in general, they're going to say, hey, there's a drastic change. And it's a drastic change. I cannot overemphasize this enough. It's, again, clearly artificial, extremely strong, especially compared to what happened 80 years ago, where there was nothing, and all of a sudden there's a lot. This isn't to say radio didn't exist, but before that, that's obviously false. But the radio signals were either not penetrating the ionosphere or were very weak when they did penetrate the ionosphere. Things like your AM radio, for example, bounces off the ionosphere to the ground, and so that really would not be a blatant sign the way radar and FM radio and television signals especially would be. So you have this big thing. So you see aliens. Now, some of them will not investigate, because that's just the nature of the beast. You can never predict what an alien entity might do. You can predict what alien entities who are similar to us, that is pack animals, like we are, could do, but it still wouldn't be a one-to-one correlation. In many cases, maybe they have a series of bad experiences, and they're going to be like the later Ming Dynasty and just like burrow into the ground, and or Japan before Commodore Perry, where they just ignore aggressively everything, just in hope it goes away. It never goes away, but that's what they're going to try to do, and that's a somewhat rational response. It's not the response humanity would take. It's a response that some of humanity would take, but in general, that's not the response humanity takes, because, you know, humans like poking at things. And then you have to think about the effect of this on their civilization as a whole. Is this a new shift, and so on? And that's a whole lot of stuff, which is all speculation. So what we can say, though, is that there are going to be some sapient alien spacefaring species, or at least radio-capable species, which are not going to broadcast, or not going to contact us. And we could be surrounded by these, and we would never know. They could be sticking to using signals like what we used before, because they don't want to leak outside. Maybe they use cabling much more extensively than we did. There's a whole lot of technologies in the paths not taken thing, which I discussed last time, where it's very feasible that they simply don't broadcast the way we do, and they may not even be looking for something like what we are doing. Although, again, you know, there's good chances they would. I mean, it's not like they're cricket in the Life, the Universe, and Everything in that book in the Hitchhiker series, which is, I think, the best one of the lot. Though still not as good as any of the two Dirk Gently series. So some people are going to be right out, and I'm going to use people to describe aliens, because as far as we know, we're talking about sapient entities, which are therefore people. So now let's look at the ones which may interact and want to interact with us, which, like I said, may be the smallest percentage. There simply may not. There could be civilizations all over the place, and, you know, that just won't or can't interact with us. Again, the last 80 years would be the capability of broadcasting the way we do. So if you look at human history going back to the evolution of Homo habilis and all the rest, where we can say that's recognizably human, the way we are. Just what? Well, less than 1% of it is a species which is capable of sending these signals, much less responding to them coherently. So, and if you look at the lifespan of our planets, life on land, 550 million years or so, and you look at what percentage we have of species that could broadcast and receive information, much less build spacecraft and so on. Again, that's an extremely small point. So the odds of us hitting a species which is essentially to respond and willing to broadcast is very, very small. That doesn't say that they don't exist. Odds are, just by the sheer number of planets that are in the solar system, we find planets everywhere we look, almost literally everywhere we look. Planets in the galaxy. There are going to be multiple civilizations which have happened to arise at roughly this time. So some will be more advanced, a very small number will be less advanced, but able to communicate with us. And by advanced, I just mean in terms of technical capability, not necessarily spiritually, socially, economically, or so on. So let's talk about the difficulty of this. Let's say I talked about the TRAPPIST system in the past, which is 20-odd light years away. The TRAPPIST system has 7 planets which are habitable to varying degrees, orbiting very close to a red dwarf star. Red dwarf stars are extremely common, by the way. But having 7 planets all as close as they are, and they're very close to each other, I think they can all fit within the orbit of Venus, if not the orbit of Mercury, which means you would literally see the planets moving by like moons, except they're all different planets and would be enormous. You would be able to see number 7 from number 1. Okay, and that assumes that there's not even any other planets in there. But the impetus to develop space travel and so on would be very high in something like a TRAPPIST system. Again, there are probably a bunch of them. But so let's say we sent something to the TRAPPIST system, and that would have arrived roughly 50-odd years ago. So if they want to communicate with us, they have to first see us, which may take a few years. Then they would have to build the equipment to broadcast to us directly, which would take an arbitrary number of years. Let's say they're really quick about it, and they build it with it. They're able to launch a satellite which can beam information directly to us within a few years. And then we would have to recognize that there's a change in the signal from that, which may take decades. Okay, again. So they could have sent something immediately and kept up the signal, and we would just be receiving it now. Now, if the signal was a single pulse of information, say it only lasted a year or two, well, we would have missed it completely. So there's no way we would know it exists. We're continuously streaming information out, but that's our specific way of doing things. That's not necessarily the way that whoever lives, the trapezians, or whatever you want to call them, would be doing this. So they could have sent a communication, we just simply missed it. Or they're sending it and we just haven't received it, or we can't decipher it, or we can't necessarily recognize it as something which we would see as artificial, or they could be sending in the wrong frequency, which gets blocked through a bunch of interplanetary, interstellar nonsense, or it's blocked by the sun's heliosphere, which is also possible if they're sitting on the wrong frequencies. So, because their sun is different than our sun, so maybe that's different. I'm sure some physicists can tell me how I'm wrong on that. Um, Anyways, there's all sorts of things which would interfere with the signal. So the best way to communicate with an alien species, the fastest way is through radio, because that only takes the speed of light. Okay, and that's not that long if you really think about it. You can, if you're traveling at the speed of light, you can go to the TRAPPIST system and back in about 50 years. Okay, that's one person's lifetime. That's less than one person's lifetime. It's feasible to have someone be trained properly, sent there, communicate, and come back. Now, is that the most efficient way to do it? No. It's you probably want to send a lot of people in a large ship and so on, and send signals before and after so they're aware that you exist, and they have some data so you can communicate mutually and so on. But let's just say all that's done. If they send a probe to us, if that probe accelerates at roughly 1 gravity, or roughly 10 meters per second, it would take probably about 2 years longer to get here and slow down and stop than light would. So that's not bad. Again, you're still within the range of a human's lifetime. Again, we don't know how long their lifetimes are. They could be centuries. They could literally be like a hive mind of things which spawn in minutes, disappear, and pass their information on to each other, again and again and again, like, extremely communicative fruit flies. But, it's possible that they can send something here in that way, or better yet, send a robot, which is what we would do, likely. That's if they have the energy available to travel that fast. That is feasible, but it's centuries away for us. Maybe not centuries away, given what breakthroughs may come, but safe to say it's centuries away for us. But maybe they've done it. So they get here, and what do they see is they get here 20-odd years after they built the ship. Let's say they started building the ship the second they got the signal. Well, then they've shown up in late 60s, early 70s. So things have drastically shifted from World War II, which is when they would have got the signal initially. No, wait, excuse me. They would have received the signal in the late 60s, early 70s. They would have arrived around 2000. So things would be much more different than that. And that assumes they leave as soon as possible. So, if there's any delay in that, they could be on their way right now, and we wouldn't know. Okay, and that's assuming they're doing everything as quickly as possible, and they have much higher tech than us in order to travel that fast. More likely, though, is they're going to send a robot on a slow journey, which will take a couple 100 years to get here, and signal back. So they receive the signal, and they send something out that takes 100 years to get here. That's 1/5 of the speed of light, or actually it's faster than that, and given the TRAPPIST system's distance, which is not a slow trip. That's actually pretty quick. So they'll arrive 2070 or thereabouts. So, again, we could have our response on the way. And the longer we broadcast like this, the more likely we'll encounter a civilization which will send something our way. But we've only broadcast like this for 80-odd years. Okay? And you have to remember that aliens don't know that we are in any way special until we start sending out radar and other radio signals that penetrate the ionosphere and penetrate the heliosphere into deep space. Prior to that, we're just a planet with a lot of life on it, which probably, as far as we can tell, is actually kind of common. So, why send an alien spacecraft to visit yet another planet that has just more life on it? Besides curiosity, besides some sort of scientific survey, in which case the aliens would probably be as unintrusive as possible, so they're not building pyramids. That's for sure. It'll be a sample return mission or something like this, or just simple observation. Until 80 years ago, there was no point in sending anything other than that to us. Okay? Every solar system has more than enough resources and our solar system does not seem to be special at all. There's no reason to send it for gold, a spaceship for gold. There's no reason to send it for water. Water is one of the most abundant things in the universe. There's no reason to send it for organic proteins or molecules because, again, those are extremely common. We find them on comets. So why would anybody come here? That's the big question you have to ask yourself when you think about ancient aliens or aliens coming to visit us. Why would they come here? And until 80 years ago, there was no reason. Except for pure, this is on our route. So, anyways, that's the end of the aliens for now, unless you guys want me to talk more about it. I'll get back to some other conspiracy theories, maybe related to aliens. Actually, let's do one related to aliens. Secret alien overlords. Let's do that one next, unless you guys request otherwise, in which case I'll do whatever you request. Feel free to comment, ask questions. I will respond as fast as, again, send requests. I'll respond as fast as I can. Feel free to buy my books. I don't have a copy of the most recent short story. This is what the one that my most recent novel. Hopefully it's not the most recent novel in a couple months or a year or so. But this is my most recent novel. So feel free to buy those and check out our website, oldsins.com. And hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.